Talks are continuing to try to end the French ban on people coming from the UK following the weekend's announcement about the spread of a new coronavirus variant. The French government says it will announce measures today that will allow transport links with Britain to resume and trade to flow across the Channel again. Boris Johnson and President Macron spoke yesterday following France's decision to close its border after growing concern about the new variant. Lorry drivers in Kent had to spend a second night sleeping in their vehicles, waiting for the border with France to reopen. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said there were 1,500 lorries waiting in Kent to cross back to the continent. But the Home Secretary has confirmed this figure is actually over that. Operation Brock, which was initially developed to ease post-Brexit congestion, has now been implemented. The EU has coordinated its response, member states pressing for UK arrivals to be tested for the virus before entering their countries. Retailers say there's plenty of food in the supply chain and supermarkets for Christmas. However, they warn that unless the French border is reopened today, there will be disruption to supplies of fresh produce by the end of the week. The UK's chief scientific advisor is warning this new variant is now everywhere and that more areas may need to enter Tier 4. Sir Patrick Vallance says lockdown measures need to be increased in some places in due course, he said, not reduced. And Northern Ireland's executive has voted against introducing a travel ban from England, Scotland and Wales. We do have some pictures for you. Look at that. You can see the long lorry queues from this morning. They are stacked up for mile upon mile on the M20 towards Dover. So let's bring you right up to date with what is happening right there. We can take you to our correspondent, Simon Jones. Simon, how is it there at the moment?
Well, the lorries may well be stacked up on the M20, but they're also parked up here in the centre of the town. Look just behind me, this is a slip road. There are lorries all the way down there. This is one of the main lanes leading to the port of Dover, and the lorries have parked up there too. So in terms of the official figures from the government, they told us this morning that around 650 lorries were parked up on the M20 motorway leading to Eurotunnel and also to the port. And then they said another 873 were parked up at a big airfield, a now defunct airfield in Manston in Kent. But the reality is those are the ones who are in the official parking spaces. But here, if you drive around Dover, people have parked up anywhere they can, any spot they can find, right along the seafront. That is full of vans and lorries. The car parks are full of vans too. So the official figure, difficult to put an estimate on it, but certainly lots and lots of people are caught up in this disruption.
And Simon, what is the expectation there of a decision between the EU particularly and Boris Johnson? We know those talks are taking place at the moment.
Yeah, we know that there have been conversations between the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron. They are said to have been going well, but we're waiting to hear a definitive outcome of those. But what we're expecting is potentially France may say the border can reopen, but what they'll demand is that anyone wanting to cross from the UK over to France will have to have a negative coronavirus test. And that will be a huge logistical operation, because when you're talking about hundreds, potentially even thousands of lorry drivers being caught up in all this, that is thousands of tests that will need to be done. And often these tests, the results may take a day or two to come through. So potentially drivers here, even if they can get tested, may not get back in time for Christmas. And if you're parked up on the road like this, lorry drivers are saying to us, well, where can you get a test? It's potentially the government here may introduce tests at the official Manston airport site, where there are hundreds of drivers there, but for others they're just asking, how is this going to happen and how will they get this negative test? How will they get home?
Simon, thanks for joining us from Dover. Well, our correspondent Gavin Lee is in Brussels for us with more on France's decision to close the border.
They've got to keep to this 48-hour period, which is ending at midnight tonight, so there's no chance that suddenly we're being briefed from the French side there will be an early out, an early end to this blockage. They are saying, well, Clement Bourne, who's the Deputy Europe Minister, is saying that there will be an announcement today on how they stop these measures, how they start to reopen the border. One thing that they've said with certainty is that they will be asking for COVID tests, rapid COVID tests and proof of negative testing before people leave. So that means for freight drivers, in effect, and is it possible to do it as quick as tomorrow? I think that's a big question at the moment, and I know that the British side are still talking to the French. We've just heard, actually, of a French head of supermarkets at one of the big supermarket chain Système U, Dominique Schelder, talking on French TV, saying that they've got trucks stuck on the UK side of the border with all sorts of fish and seasonal seafood produce, langoustines, scallops, monkfish, for example, he's saying, which he said there will be definite shortages in French supermarkets ahead of Christmas. We're looking at shortages tomorrow. We're looking at shortages on Christmas Eve as well. And he is saying desperately that the borders need to be reopened. So the point is, Ben, the pressure isn't just on the UK side at the moment. The French industry is putting pressure on its own government too.
Let's join our political correspondent Ian Watson, who is in Westminster for us. Ian, what are you hearing about when we might get an announcement on what's happening at Dover?
Well, we may get an announcement later today, just after lunchtime, but that doesn't mean that because there's a movement in talks, there's going to be any movement of freight. Certainly from what I'm hearing from government sources is that they don't think they'll be able to put in place any testing facilities by today. They're not absolutely ruling it out, but they think that would be difficult to achieve. They need to get a plan to get hauliers tested, and that is likely to take till at least until tomorrow. Then the question that's been raised in the negotiations, I think that's been touched upon by Gavin and Simon as well, is what kind of tests are being required. Is it the rapid lateral flow tests, which might miss the new variant or some cases of the new COVID variant, or is it going to be the more traditional tests where results can take between 24 and 48 hours? Now, that's been a matter of negotiation. We don't yet know what has been agreed, if indeed anything has, with the French government. If they're going for the longer tests, then clearly it's going to take longer to clear the backlog. But even if they go for more rapid testing, the Road Hauliers Association has been saying this morning that with the new customs arrangements that have to be put in place, deal or no deal with the European Union from the 1st of January, then there are likely to be some delays with the new customs procedures in any case. And then if you start adding on to that the burden of hauliers being tested, then you could see not just delays, but of course, again, problems in delivering fresh produce. So there are real issues here for the government to try and solve, both political with the French and logistical on the basis of those negotiations. So yes, an announcement likely today, but probably no movement of any freight out of the country until at least tomorrow.
Ian, we're hearing a call took place last night between Boris Johnson and Ursula von der Leyen. Some of those issues probably came up, but do we have any other details of what they discussed? Fishing, for instance?
Well, what's interesting about this call is actually when we're getting disagreements between the two sides over a future trade deal, there's a degree of disagreement over the call, because an EU official has confirmed that a call took place between Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission President, and Boris Johnson last night. But Downing Street are saying that they are not aware of the call. It's been described elsewhere as a secret call, but I think what is interesting is that if the two leaders are in discussions, then clearly they are striving to get a Brexit deal over the line before the deadline on December the 31st. I would be surprised if fishing wasn't being discussed. There have been reports from Brussels that the UK has tabled a new offer on fishing to try to break the deadlock. Some of the things which have been put into the public domain, for example, perhaps a 5-year transition period where new arrangements can be phased in. Again, Whitehall sources, government sources here, making it clear that they do not recognise the specifics of that. Nonetheless, it would look as though both sides are trying to move towards each other on one of the major stumbling blocks to getting a deal, but we're also being told, of course, there are some other issues which are still outstanding. The issues, for example, of how much the government can subsidise businesses, industries in each country, whether this is fair between the EU and the UK. The UK side certainly felt it was imbalanced against the UK, so there'll be other things to sort out. And the kind of steer that we're getting at the moment is that the talks are going to continue, but they may have to have a Christmas break and resume. If there was going to be a deal, then MPs would be dragged back here to Westminster to ratify it on either the 29th or the 30th of December. But at the moment, that deal is not yet there. But I think it is interesting that we are getting discussions at a very high level at this crucial stage.
Ian, thank you so much.